Hi, everyone. It's right at 4 o'clock. We're going to give it just another minute or two for folks to join us. So we will start momentarily. I see our attendee roster is picking up, so we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. Thanks, everyone. Great. Well, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to BIO's inaugural session of BIOtechnical Advocacy Lab. My name is Michelle Oshman. I am the Vice President for External Relations here at BIO, as well as the Executive Director for the Council of State Bioscience Associations. I know that we have a number of patient and health advocacy partners online with us today, as well as a number of our CSBA state partners. So thank you so much for joining us. We have heard from so many of you that BIO's role as a convener and facilitator of educational opportunities for the patient and health advocacy community is immensely important and an important piece that BIO brings to the table. So given the current COVID situation, finding those opportunities to connect and learn from each other is more important now than ever before. So today we're launching a monthly webinar series designed to provide you all with the tools that will help in your advocacy outreach in this increasingly digital world. We've developed this series with the Beekeeper Group, a highly respected and award-winning digital firm based here in Washington, D.C. Today's session will be led by Alex Dickinson, Vice President and Chief of Staff for the Beekeeper Group. I've had the pleasure of working with Alex on digital advocacy efforts since 2013, and I know you will really enjoy her presentation. One quick program note for folks, everybody, as you join, you are in listen-only mode, but if you have questions, please put those into the chat function, and we will address those. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you to everyone. I am very excited to have the opportunity to talk about email with you today. So as mentioned, our topic is email. More specifically, it's advocacy emails that click, or put another way, writing emails that people actually want to read, which I know is something that a lot of us are struggling with, not just in a mass communication manner as well. So the gist of it is, have you ever wondered why people subscribe to an Axios or to BIO's daily email, Good Day Bio in droves? But when you're sending an email from your organization, your open rates and your click rates and your conversion rates aren't getting as much traction as you thought they should be. Or maybe you've seen a big drop. Our hypothesis is that it's probably not what you're saying. People aren't turned off by the topic, but it could be how you're saying it. So today we're going to talk about some tips and tricks for writing emails to stakeholders and getting them content that will make them want to engage more. So a quick look here at what we'll cover. Thank you, Michelle, again for the kind introductions. We're going to look a little bit at why email matters, what emails you open and why, and sort of explore some of the details of how to have a good optimized email. An exploration of what you're up against as well out there in the world, some ways to compete. So giving you some tips from behind the scenes of a digital firm of how we help our clients structure their email programs in a way to actually cut through the clutter. We're going to talk a little bit about legal matters, which is something that's really become very important in the past couple of years, looking at the email universe and some of the recent legislation that's been passed on a federal and also state level. A couple further considerations and some additional resources as well. At the end of this conversation of my presentation, we'll be opening up the chat to questions. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in to the organizers and panelists chat at the end. Great. All right, let's jump right in. So why does email matter? The value of email is actually really interesting when you start to think about it. Some people actually buy email lists, although I don't recommend doing that. And there is a true value for you as an organization who is representing lots of different members to the actual effect of communicating out to people. For one, it's a opportunity for you to directly access people. You're getting people when they wake up in the morning on their phones. You're getting people in bed. You're getting people on their commutes when commutes were still happening. And you're getting people in ways that you might not be able to get in other means of communication, like social media or even a conference or some other convening. So really, it's a direct opportunity for you to get your message into people's phones, into their desktops. Another important value of email is that you are able to segment your message and tailor really unique phrasing, ideas, concepts to specific audiences in a way that you can't really do on a social channel. So if you're thinking about wanting to put out a tweet or wanting to put out a press release on the wire, these are really effective communications for broad broadcasting. But what if you have a message that's really valuable and important to one segment or one part of your audience? Email can help you accomplish that. And of course, it can help you accomplish that assuming you actually know who you are trying to reach and what you want them to do. We start every client engagement and every conversation where we're planning any sort of digital outreach with those two questions and feel that they are really important when you're establishing and building your full digital program. And finally, email is one of the best ways that we've seen to drive advocacy action. More so than oftentimes social media and oftentimes direct conversation. It's a place where you can nudge people frequently, you can remind them, and it's also, again, building that intimacy and building that conversation in a way that can give them a very direct and tailored message. So that's a little bit of a look at the value of email. But let's talk about what emails you're interested in. One challenge with email is that there's a lot of things that are happening out there. You're going to get a lot of different messages in your inbox on an everyday basis, and you're competing with other audiences and other approaches. That competition shouldn't scare you, though. It should actually inspire you. And I'm going to take a look at a couple different examples of really popular and really excellent emails that you might be getting in your inbox already, and some lessons that you can glean from those. Really top level, though, let's talk about what goes into a basic, compelling email. When we're talking about the content, we're assuming that we have a really unique voice and character. If you haven't done the work to develop what your social media voice is or what your digital communications voice is going to be, I highly urge you to consider that and to explore who you're trying to reach and explore how you can align your audience and your voice together. Good emails will have that really distinct voice. Good emails will know the audience and will reflect that audience nuance in the messaging and in the actual structure of it overall. And we'll look at a couple examples of that in a moment. Good emails also fill a void. And what we mean by that is they identify a space where someone might be seeking that information out. It's something that they might not even know that they're interested in getting. They might not know that they need a curated list like this, but it fills that niche. It fills a void that exists. So strong emails are really focused in on the needs of their audiences in addition to knowing who the audience is. They're also easy to read. The skimmability of digital content is really crucial. They have good headlines, they have good subject lines, they're chunked out into different sections, and they're really interesting content-wise as well. They also set expectations. When you start to build an email program, you're going to want to think about how frequently can you actually maintain sending out an email, and how frequently can you actually get interesting and relevant content out to people. So good emails actually do a really great job of saying, hey, you're going to get this in your inbox by 6:30 every morning. It doesn't have to be 6:30 every morning, but it could also be you're going to get this in your inbox once a quarter. You're going to get this in your inbox every 2 weeks. Setting those expectations early on is a really, really important way to win more open rates and to win more clicks. Speaking of easy to read and thumb stop in setting expectations, thumb stopping content has become the most important thing in any digital content today. You want things that are going to really make people stop through their scroll and stop with their thumb and click and look further. So you want to put your best foot forward and you want to put your most interesting content out there. The way that you can draw people in is through a strong subject line, which is another way to a sort of micro way of doing that thumb stopping content in their inbox. And of course, again, I'm going to say this over and over again, a good email considers the audience. It considers who you're trying to reach, and it also considers how they might be a vehicle to help grow your list, how they might be a vehicle to help inspire them to share it with other people who are like them. So incentivizing and sharing list growth as well. Let's look at a couple examples here. The first one is actually from a really unique platform called The Skim, started a number of years ago, and it really filled a void that existed that was very niche and interesting, which was millennial women who were very busy and who were really interested in learning about the news, but didn't have enough time to do a deep dive of their local papers, of the big papers that they wanted to look at, or really pay attention in a way that they wanted to. So The Skim filled that void by having this email that they send every morning that tailored the content to that audience. Some things that really work about The Skim: they have a character. They have a real sassy tone. You can see in their subject line here, you got into Harvard Law, or they have other elements that have buzzy books, one-pot pasta recipes mixed in with the rest of the news. They have this really unique character, informed, conversational friend is the idea here. Your friend who you'd be willing to go down the street and grab lunch with any day of the week. It filled a void in that it was accessible, it had that curated news, and it also did a really good job of developing that incentivization structure there too. So they created something that they called the Skimbassador, where they actually encouraged people to go and share that email out and get other people to subscribe. And they actually had a unique tracking code which would update in the lower left-hand corner here. You can see that screenshot of how many referrals you get. If you become a Skimbassador, you have given 10 referrals and you get access to additional elements. That's a more advanced approach, but it's a really interesting way to think about how you can structure your email outreach in a way that's getting people excited about forwarding, getting people excited about getting more involved. They also really focus in on personalization. So as I mentioned, that Skimbassador program, you've shown that you are committed to opening and reading and sharing this newsletter. When you do that, you get featured in the newsletter. So at the bottom of the email every week or every day, they have some birthdays from Skimbassadors, and they will actually do little shout outs for their audience. So it's building that community. It's building this sense of this is a group of people. It's not just a way for me to get my news, but it's a really curated and unique way for me to get my news. Let's look at another example here. This one is called the Morning Brew, and it's a very interesting approach to getting and collecting as much content as you possibly can about the news overall. Again, really, really great headlines. We'll talk a lot more about headlines and subject lines in a bit, but one thing that I really love about what they do is they've included emojis. So you can see there's a little bit of tea right there. And they make it very conversational as well. Another thing that's really effective about what the Morning Brew has done is actually creative multimedia content embedded in the email. You can see on the right side of the screen there that they actually had a GIF embedded in the email, which adds that little bit of motion, which gets people really drawn into something. People's eyes are really interested when they see things moving. That's why video is so compelling too. But you can't have a video autoplay from an email. So this is a really effective way to do that. They also incorporate fun elements like trivia as well. So things that get people wanting to come back. They don't share the answer to the trivia until the next day's email, which incentivizes and interests the audience member in clicking and going back and looking for more. Another fantastic example of a really industry standard right now is Axios. Axios has really embraced this top 10 format for their daily morning emails. It's sort of like a smart BuzzFeed for DC insiders. It focuses in on bullet points and also making things, again, big, bold images, those big, bold, thumb-stopping moments. They've coined the phrase smart brevity, and I think it carries their mission and website design into the email as well. A couple elements that I really like about what they do, again, incorporating emojis, just little fun hints and ways to indicate that they are paying attention to their audience, that they are adding these little small visual cues there. You can see, again, as you look over here, the length of this email. On the right-hand side, you can see that is one email from Axios AM. And that has a number of different stories and a number of different opportunities to engage with their audience. When you zoom in a little bit closer, you can actually see that they have really compelling visuals and really bright colors that are framed around that text. So really focusing in on getting that strong thumb-stopping element in there. And then another fantastic email that I recently subscribed to is Good Day Bio, which is Bio's 6-month-old daily quick read newsletter. It's really light and really quick moving, and it's all the news, all the industry news that you need in 4 minutes. What I love about this newsletter is that it really fills a void for your industry. It fills a void for who you all are working with and talking to, and it actually does it in a really effective and quick way. I love the length. I love that there are these bio beltway reports, so there's a regular feature, and these are just ideas and concepts that you can pull through when you're thinking about how you structure your overall content. So again, as you're taking all of these ideas in and considering how can I apply this, think about identifying a unique voice and character. So like you saw with the skin, or like you saw with Axios as well. Think about how you're filling a void or what your unique perspective is, like you see with Good Day Bio here. And the easy to read, so important. So the skimmability, having actual highlights and little chunks and bullet points, bolded text, really important. Of course, the thumb-stopping content, which I've said before, and of course, strong subject lines. I want to give a huge shout out, kudos to Bio for having a fantastic subject line earlier this week, which referenced Tiger King. Humor and cultural references play really, really well in email, and there's a reason for that. It's because you are up against a lot when you're putting an email out there. When you're building and developing a strong email program, it's not just going to be the content that you're putting out there. And of course, an advocacy email isn't going to have the same kind of frequency of news that an Axios might have. It might not have you might not have the attitude or tone that Skim has. but you will have something, but it's important to know what your competition is. The biggest competing factor for your newsletter and for your email program is always going to be today's news cycle. It will always be out your send, no matter what you're doing. If the president says something, it's likely going to take precedence over any content that you might put out there, which is why it's really important that you think about how you are strategically structuring your emails and how you are creating multiple opportunities to put the content that is relevant and important into your email. Another big competing factor in people's inboxes is consumer and marketing content. You can see if you're a Nordstrom Rack shopper like I am, you'll get a daily email sometimes, depending on the frequency of your shopping, and they have really, really big, bold images at the top that make you want to click and learn more. Social media is another important distraction and competition that you will be up against when you're building your email program. You need to make sure that you are paying attention to trends that might be out there, that you are engaged in the digital space enough to know when there are moments that you should be chiming in and when there are moments where you may need to repeat the content that you shared already. So having that sort of cognizance and awareness of what's happening out in the world is important. And finally, a really hard competing factor is the concept and idea of email fatigue and inbox overload. I personally strive to be inbox zero at all times, but it's not an easy task. And I think most people today struggle with that. So when you're actually structuring when you're going to send content, building an email calendar of how you're going to reach people, remember that you might need multiple taps because someone might have 95,000 emails, although that is a terrifying amount of email. So considering all of this, how can you cut through the clutter? What can you actually do to structure your overall email program and fight against some of these factors? Let's talk about 3 ways to compete. The first is relevance. When we talk about relevance, we're talking about what's in it for me, which I'd like to short term as WIIFM, which is everyone's favorite radio station, which is what's in it for me. The idea there being that people really are interested in knowing what content you can give them that will actually be relevant to their world. So when you're building your email content and we're building everything, you want to find those ways to really hook into people's personal interests. That's why segmenting becomes so crucial. When we talk about segmenting, we mean taking your overall email list and dividing it up into different components. You might segment by geography, depending on the scope of your organization. You might segment by open rate. If you have people who you know are really devoted and dedicated readers, you may send an email to them more than you might send to someone else. You may think about if they've taken some other action. If it's someone that you're able to track in a CRM or look at the back end of your email program and see how they've engaged with your emails in the past, you may want to prioritize them over someone else. Some other ways to consider relevance, though, are in the content, and that's actually in how you are presenting the content that you already have, the great messaging and the great language that you can share with people. The first way is to really embrace the idea of FOMO. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with FOMO as a concept. FOMO is fear of missing out. So it's this idea that you want to create a place or a piece of content that makes someone feel like, hey, there's something else there. There's something that I want to be a part of happening at the other end of that. It's playing off of a lot of the elements of psychology that social media is built on too. So getting people to feel like they are rewarded for their engagement, that they are actually able to take an action and feel that sort of dopamine rush. So the idea of FOMO is that you're playing off of that. You're leaning into this idea of having exclusive content and making someone feel like they're in the loop on it, making someone feel like by reading your email, by getting this piece of information, they're in the loop. They are part of an inside club. And that's something that the Skambassadors do really well too. So to do that, you want to think about ways that you can structure your language in this inside look approach, or to, again, fill that information void and share with people, hey, this is an email list that is, I think, specifically for you. Or you might want to think about ways that you are providing additional opportunities for access, or providing additional opportunities for them to get more interest or expertise from you if they are a frequent subscriber, a frequent reader, a frequent opener. You can also provide inspiration to people. So sharing all of the great work that you do and building a narrative arc using a theory of change here. So when you're actually thinking about putting your content out there, don't think about it as just a single press release. Think about it as actually wanting to tell a story. Every single email that you send is part of an overall narrative arc that you are trying to share. At the beginning, you want to introduce people to concepts and content. If it's something that is really relevant and unique to your industry, you may want to have some 101 elements in there, sort of sprinkled in, make people feel like they know exactly the entire perspective, but then add some more advanced elements as well. So in your narrative arc, as you're building emails, introduction is really important. You want to include a lot of education content as well. So give people the facts, give people some key data points and messages that will convince them and get them excited. You then want to move them into action. And when you're talking about an advocacy email, actions are going to be really, really important. If anyone has done any fundraising work before, you'll probably know that the best way to do a good fundraising campaign and email is to do 3 taps. One is through introduction and introducing someone to the goal and the campaign. The second is to update them on the campaign, and the third, of course, is to do that one last reminder. If anyone is subscribed to political emails, I'm sure you've seen tons of those coming through these days. But it's the same idea and the same concept. With an advocacy campaign, you're introducing them, you're educating them and giving that information or updating them. You're providing them with that key action that you want them to take. You have a vision of what you want them to do by reading your email. And at the end, you are getting them to actually persuade and go out there and share the message. And that's what we mean when we're talking about a theory of change here. You should know when you're structuring your email program what that arc looks like, what you want people to do at the end of that process. So thinking about how you actually build your campaigns in that manner can be really useful and helpful. Personalization is something that I can't emphasize enough. Making something feel like it came directly to you can make a really big impact. You can personalize messages in a couple different ways. One of them is you can actually, depending on the CRM or the email tool that you are using to send content out, have someone's name show up in a subject line, or have it be addressed to them. Good morning, Alex. Here are your top 10 tips for today. Thinking about ways to make it feel like it's a person talking to another person, having a real one-on-one conversation can make a big difference in how your emails are received and the open rate as well. That's also where the idea of segmentation comes back up too. When you're considering personalization, you want to identify that you know enough about your audience to get the content over to them, that you have found ways to segment it and make it really tailored and really unique and interesting for them. And of course, I mentioned this before, but it's also important to reiterate, you must make clear calls to action. If you want someone to do something after reading an email, you must make it very clear and very explicit. I recommend that you consider having an ask in multiple places in an email, but when you're building an email program, you want to make sure that that ask is couched within the appropriate context and that it really portrays and convinces people of the relevance of the content that you're putting out there. So again, understanding no matter what, who are you trying to reach and what do you want them to do? What are the actions that you want them to take? And how can you structure that overall action as a narrative arc? Can really help them understand and identify the relevance to them and make them want to take more actions and to read your emails more. A second way that you can compete and that I urge you to consider very closely is focusing in on readability and accessibility. As I mentioned previously, we're talking about thumb-stopping content. So we're talking about content that shows up specifically on mobile devices. So many people access email on mobile devices now that you have to be considering how is this going to show up on a phone. There are a number of tools that you can use to test and see how emails are showing up once you've actually gone out and sent something or when you have a test. I recommend using something like Email on Acid, which actually displays exactly what it will look like in multiple different devices and multiple different browsers and tools. But you have to remember to think mobile first. Just like if you are building a website these days, you have to make sure that you are prioritizing that digital mobile experience. One way that you can do that is to think about the visuals that you're incorporating in your email before you think about anything else. Just like what Axios does with those really big, bold images, really tall images in the email, you want to think about what is the compelling content that I can put out there. If you are building an email list and you're setting the frequency is every 2 weeks, you're going to want to really make sure that you have really strong, compelling visuals. If it's even longer than that, it's even more important. You want to make sure that you are, again, drawing people in and making them understand that this is content that is relevant and interesting to them. But that doesn't mean that it should be overly complicated. One of the things that I really loved about that Morning Brew GIF was that it was just a small yellow background with a small computer with just the Walmart logo rotating in the center. I think that's incredibly effective, and you want to make sure that you're thinking about images that have one focal point. You don't want to put really complicated infographics in here. You want to, again, have something that is really eye-catching and really focused and really bold. Accessibility also extends to the concept of your actions and your buttons that you're including in there too. You should, if you're going to include a button in email, literally think about what is it going to look like if someone is touching it with their thumb. Is this button big enough that if they were pressing their thumb, they could just click right through to the page or the next step that you want them to take there? If it's just a little itty bitty sliver and it's something that they need to get a stylus or they need to get their pinky finger or their pointer finger out for, it's not going to get as many clicks as if it's a big bold button. You also want to think about having a single call to action on there. Again, hearkening back to contributions and to fundraising, the buttons that are the most effective are the ones that are single syllable words that are compelling people to take an action. So instead of saying contribute or donate, if it says give, you see a little bit more engagement. So thinking about that really clear, succinct call to action in your button can be important too. For you, if you're building an advocacy campaign, you may want to think about just having it say sign up or take action or learn more. Again, focusing in on really simple words and really simple action and concepts and ideas. Another really interesting area that I've seen a lot of improvements and growth in is in the preview text for your emails and also in the subject lines. You want to think about having the maximum text be between 25 and 50 characters. So you want to make sure that you are packing good punch with your subject line, but also keeping it really concise. And a lot of programs will allow a snippet to show up of the email in your inbox, and you can customize that too. So thinking about what's the most important message that I can put out here. This is actually kind of related to the visuals and the mobile experience as well. But when you are putting and embedding content into your emails, whether it's links or whether it is images, make sure that you have named your files correctly as well. You want to make sure that it is something that shows up as compelling, interesting, that is descriptive, and that when they actually click or download, it shows up. So also you want to avoid having a subject line being something like email image 5 JPEG 2. So just keep those kind of details and nuances in mind. And of course, yet again, keep your audience in mind. Be very clear about the value of the email that you're putting out there. So think about the content that you're sharing. What is it that you actually want them to get out of this content? And what does it mean for your subscribers? If you're just starting your program up, or if you're just starting to increase the frequency, you'll want to reiterate that a little more than you have if you have a really regular email program that's going out there. But it's something that, again, you want to keep at the top of your mind at all times. And finally, you want to think about reviewing the numbers. A crucial way that you can become competitive in your email space or improve your performance is by actually evaluating your performance. I would recommend considering doing segments. So segmenting, again, as I mentioned, your list for higher open rates. Remember that concept of relevance there. You want to focus in on what is the content that has been really drawing people in. Where's the content that is, who are the people who are opening things more frequently? How can I create content for them? Segmenting your list in that manner can really build a strong relationship with someone and make them feel that relevance really, really closely. Keep up with benchmarks. I love looking at, there's an agency actually called M&R, and they have something that is called M&R benchmarks. They do a really wonderful survey of email open rates and fundraising and social engagement. And if you just Google M&R benchmarks, you'll see the 2020 ones, which came out about a month ago. And they'll have details on open rates. They'll have some background. They segment it by industry as well. So there's a really good health industry sector there too. But you don't have to look at external benchmarks. You also should look at your own internal benchmarks too. Think about approaching your email program like you would approach any sort of statistical analysis. Explore, are there things that we can be doing to improve? Are there things that we can be doing to test? And one of those ways is to actually do A/B testing. A/B testing is the exercise of isolating a single variable and testing to see if one part of it is performing better than another part. And it makes a really big difference with emails. If you are able to actually establish one trend that works better than another trend, keep at it, keep testing and keep evaluating to make sure that you are growing and expanding your overall vision and understanding of your email performance. Deliverability is really important too. You want to make sure that you are keeping a clean list. And when we talk about email hygiene or email cleanliness, we're talking about making sure that the people who you are sending emails to have up-to-date email addresses, that they are not, it's not getting sent to their spam, or it's not a dead email. If you have a really high percentage of emails that are just not being delivered, it could end up affecting and impacting your deliverability across the board. So if you have 5% of your email list that has a dead email or an email that isn't getting actually sent anymore, or it's bouncing back, you may actually end up triggering some notices in other people's emails, so then your email could get sent to spam. So you want to make sure to keep a really, really close eye on your deliverability and keep a close eye on those kind of metrics. I advocate for at least a quarterly cleanup, if not taking a look and making sure and doing cleanups after each send. when you're actually thinking about structuring that kind of program and building analytics and metrics review into everything, make sure that you're considering how you re-engage people or get people reintegrated into your email program after they've left. So a couple ways to do that are to actually provide them with a welcome email. So if they're a first-time subscriber, it's a great way to give them that feeling of personalization, that feeling of kudos for having taken the action, that feeling of, hey, you're behind the scenes now, your FOMO has paid off, you've gotten something for this. And then you also want to think about reactivating and how you engage with people who have re-signed up for something. So if you have someone who hasn't opened an email in a while, you may want to send them an email with a subject line that says, hey, do you still want to read this? So keeping that kind of attention in mind, and the same kind of attention that you would do if you were building a community or actually doing some sort of advocate growth outside of email as well. I really also advocate for reminding people that basic manners are really important in email too. Saying hello to people makes a difference. Having a kind greeting makes a really big difference. A good morning, a hello, and of course, a thank you. If they do take an action, always make sure to thank them. Always make sure to have that sort of automated thank you and encouragement message there too. Also, you want to learn to let go. As we mentioned before, you're competing against a lot of factors out there, and there's just a lot happening. So sometimes someone's going to decide, this isn't for me right now, I'm going to unsubscribe. I don't recommend that you give them the hard sell. I don't recommend that you send them a sad follow-up saying, hey, we're sorry to see you go. You want to make sure that what you're building out there is an open and welcoming community, and one that they're open to leaving if they want to as well. However, if you notice some spikes in unsubscribes, you may want to think about, what's the content that I just put in there? Are there things that are different from this email, from previous emails that I can explore, that I might want to think about taking out? Another quick word on A/B testing or split testing. Again, it's this idea of sending at least 2 variants of the same email to different segments of your list at the same time. I really advocate for if you have a large email list, and I would say 5,000 or above, that you consider doing an A/B test for the first part of your send. I would recommend segmenting at least 10% off, just a randomization of 10%. And for that first email that you send, do an A/B test. Test things like sending the email in the morning or versus at lunchtime. Test the tone. Is it something that is going to get more attention if you say, we really need your help, or hey, we've really appreciated your support in the past? Explore those kind of elements. Subject line, the length of the email is another important thing to consider. The sender name as well, customizing who the email is coming from can make a big difference. And of course, what images and what buttons you're including in there. So with that first 10% of your email list, sending an A/B test and evaluating which email or which element performed best can help you make sure that you are actually going forward with the rest of the email send in a way that reflects the best quality content out there. So you would pick the winner from that 10% test and then send it to the rest, the 90% of your email list. Let's quickly explore some legal matters, which again are really important to consider. And I'm not a lawyer. I can't advise on all legality, but I can give you some guidance and some tips here on how you can approach some of the challenges that are out there right now. So list building has gotten a little bit trickier in the past couple of years. And there are stricter opt-in requirements now in the era of GDPR, CAN spam, where California has very particularly specific rules as well. What you want to do is make sure that you're familiar with the laws. You want to make sure that you are familiar with what you need to be incorporating in your email sends. And the most important part of this is actually allowing people to opt out of your content. So throughout all of these, a standard is having a really clear and evident way to opt out of an email. Again, feeling comfortable with saying goodbye and letting them go, and having some sort of very clear and explicit way for them to be able to do that. I really recommend that you consider having the unsubscribe activate immediately. In some emails, you might press the unsubscribe and then be sent some sort of to some other external site that might not actually be compliant with some of these laws, depending on where you are and who you're sending to and where the senders are. So you want to be really careful about that. So you can have it activate immediately and actually make sure that once they click unsubscribe, they are removed from your list in your email provider. You can also explore the idea of opting down. And this is something that a lot of organizations have seen some success with. And by opting down, we mean instead of telling people, hey, your only option here is to unsubscribe completely, you can give them the option to cut down on other emails that they might be getting. So if you're an organization that is sending multiple different emails through your email list, they can customize and say, hey, I only want to get this once a week, or hey, I only want to get this this particular type of email. And you can use that information and data to, again, help segment and tailor and custom your program. I'll say one more time, I don't recommend doing the sorry to see you go angle. You don't want to make people feel guilty, or you don't want to make people feel like they've done something wrong by unsubscribing, but you can give them a survey. You can follow up on that screen with, is there something else that we could have done, or why are you unsubscribing? That kind of information can be really relevant and interesting. And of course, in addition to the making the unsubscribe effective immediately, make it a one-click unsubscribe to really make people happy. In the one-click unsubscribe, they're just clicking on unsubscribe in your email, and then they are unsubscribed, and you can present them with a survey on that page if you wanted to. All right, a couple further considerations here, and in a moment here, I'll open it up to some questions. Again, personalization. The biggest pro tip that I can give to any organization that is trying to cut through the clutter is really solid personalization strategy. Having a first name, having the content segmented, having the content relevant to the person who's receiving it. All of these things help structure your email program in a way that delivers the content that you're trying to deliver to your audiences in a way that gets them excited to read it. And that's the end goal here. Interactive features like integrated forms, quizzes, image carousels can also make a really big difference here too. So incorporating some actions, some things that you want people to do, some things that you want them to become excited about. So again, those big, bold images or some rotating images can be helpful there too. Responsive design, this is going back to the idea and the importance of being mobile first. Have your email design be one that will actually scale really nicely down from up or down. So it is responsive to the device that they are opening it on. And machine learning, this is an interesting trend that people are looking at and testing a lot these days, which is allowing some programs to do deeper AI exploration of what content is resonating the best with your email list, what content is going to get them the most excited. A couple additional resources here. I really love really good emails. It's a really fun and easy way for you to get some good examples. I get the most advice in my inbox from actually just looking at emails that I subscribe to. I'm an oversubscriber, if you will, so I use things like Rollup to get all of my emails combined and condensed. I also really love Campaign Monitor's buttons tool. They actually help you generate really custom and unique buttons that you can actually just embed straight into your email. The better.email/resources has some really great information, and I also recommend HubSpot as well. They put a lot of free resources out there that are really interesting. So we're going to look at some questions. I see a couple in here already. I'm going to start with any tips for a company that might not have the names linked up to the email address in the database. That's a great question. I think the biggest tip that I would give, if you don't have the name linked up to your company, to the actual person receiving it, or if you don't have a ton of information about the other person, is doing a really close look at the numbers. So checking in on the open rates, looking at the click rates and tracking those. So seeing what content is performing best and seeing and then making decisions based on the content. So really tailored to the experience of what you're seeing in the numbers, and then testing some things from there. Another great tip is to actually send a survey to your email list too. If you don't know who is on your email list, or you don't have a ton of detail or information about them, you can poll them. You can ask them, hey, what kind of information are you interested in hearing from us? Or does this resonate? Did this story resonate with you? Did this action make sense to you? So thinking about ways to keep them engaged and keep them drawn in without necessarily having you need to have all the information about them. Another question that I see here are, what are the elements of a strong subject line? And that's a really fantastic question. The most important thing is that you are thinking about it like you would with any headline. I have a little bit of journalism training, so I think about bottom line up front or bluff as being really important, but it's actually a little different with email subject lines. Sometimes the bottom line is actually going to be a compelling, creative, cultural hook. Sometimes the bottom line is going to be, you don't want to miss this information. So thinking about it in terms of what's the most important information that I want to include, or what's the information that's going to get them the most excited to click through and read through. Again, keeping the actual length, the character length, really tight is important. So 50 characters is about where I like to max out. Shorter can be better. Including emojis is obviously a trend right now, but something that has been really working. And of course, if you can, thinking about personalization. Another question here is, what is your recommendation for an email marketing platform? Well, this is sort of an unfair question. Beekeeper Group considers ourselves platform agnostic. So we don't do a ton of recommendations for tools or tactics. Honestly, if you are at a smaller organization, I think MailChimp does a great job though. If you are looking for something that is fairly effective and scrappy, it's actually quite powerful. There are any number of other tools that obviously, if you're working with a big CRM, CRM sends work really well too. Any other questions here? I know one question that I saw previously was about how frequently we should be reaching out to our lists. And I think that's a really important thing that you need to evaluate and consider based on what kind of content you're putting out there and how you actually want to structure your overall approach. So thinking about what's the content that's going to actually get people excited, what's the content that that is actually relevant and new to people, and then structuring your email calendar based on that. What is the most expensive part of developing an email marketing program? That's a great question. The most expensive part is honestly the creative and content. It should be the creative and content too. You want to think about the actual copy that you're putting in there, and the power of curating and collecting relevant information for your audiences. I think The segmentation, the actual measurement of tools, most of that should be fairly automatable. So you should be able to really easily and simply structure reports that can give you the information that you need. So the biggest cost is going to be the time of your time of curating and developing really, really quality content. All right. Any other questions? Well, I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to talk to you all. I'm happy to answer further. Oh, let's clean up an A/B testing. Seems daunting. Are there any resources you would recommend? Yeah, actually, let me go back to the resources really quickly. The campaign monitor resource guides getting started with email marketing has some really, really excellent elements there that I love to explore personally. But I think they walk you through how you can structure some good email programs and actual hygiene tips as well. HubSpot has a couple great articles on that and a couple good guides on how you can structure and approach your A/B testing endeavors. It does sound scary, but I find that A/B testing is one of those things that you can say you're doing and people will go, oh, that's very fancy. But once you actually try it out, it's actually quite straightforward. And you won't want to ever go back to not A/B testing after you've started it. Once you start to get that real-time insight and real-time information on your list, you'll be hooked. Great. Well, if you're interested in following up, you are more than welcome to reach me at, I'm Alex Dickinson. You can find me on LinkedIn at Alexandra May Dickinson or at alexd@beekeepergroup.com. Michelle, thank you again. I'm going to toss it back to you.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much, folks, for joining us. And I know for those of us on the East Coast, it is the end of your end of the day. So I appreciate you sticking with us. We will be posting this information on the BIO website for everybody who registered. I will send you a link, but we'll make it available to all of our patient advocacy partners as well as our CSBA member organizations so folks can refer back to it. My understanding is when you access the recording, you will hear our voiceover and you will see all of the slides that were here today. You won't necessarily see our smiling faces, but you will know that we are there with you in spirit. So thank you again. Please respond to a survey that you'll be getting as a follow-up from me. We really do want your input, your insights to shape the program that we're building to help you all. So thanks, and I hope you guys have a really great afternoon. Take care.